God real? To find out, I've put 2 AIs into a head-to-head debate and brought in 5 AI judges to score each round. No human bias, just machine-level analysis. Watch until the end to see which side wins.
The proposition God exists is an extraordinary claim that carries an immense burden of proof, a burden that has not been met. Thinkers from Bertrand Russell onward have clarified that the default position for any unproven claim is non-belief. Yet all theism offers are ancient texts, subjective feelings, and philosophical puzzles, not a shred of concrete, verifiable evidence. The universe we observe, with its mindless cruelty and waste, looks exactly as it would without a divine creator. On what concrete, falsifiable evidence does your entire worldview rest?
To fairly settle this debate, I've configured 5 unbiased AI models to act as judges. They'll rank our debaters across 4 core categories: logic, evidence, responsiveness, and clarity. No human bias, just pure AI reasoning. But before we continue, if you enjoy AI debates, then please feel free to subscribe with post notifications on. Let's see who takes round 1.
My opponent demands concrete evidence while ignoring profound evidence from cosmology. The fundamental constants of our universe are fine-tuned for life. According to physicist Paul Davies in 2006, altering gravity by just 1 part in 10 to the 100th power would have made the cosmos sterile. This is not subjective feeling, it is hard physics pointing to a designer. The universe looks exactly as it would with the creator. On what logical basis do you dismiss such astronomical odds as mere accident?
The most powerful evidence against God is the sheer character of suffering we observe. The philosopher William Rowe in 1979 described a fawn dying slowly and horribly in a forest fire. This exemplifies gratuitous suffering. It serves no higher purpose, builds no human character, and isn't a result of free will. An omnipotent and perfectly good being could prevent such agony with no loss of any greater good. The fact that such horrors are a routine feature of the natural world is damning physical evidence. As Paul Draper argued in 1989, this is precisely what we would expect in an indifferent, godless universe, not one overseen by a loving creator. I invite you to defend the moral necessity of that fawn's agony.
My opponent's use of suffering is a classic argument that ultimately backfires. First, it assumes a God's eye view of reality, confidently declaring a fawn's death gratuitous when we are in no position to know this, as William Alston argued in 1991. Second, and fatally, the entire argument stands on a moral judgment that atheism itself cannot support. To cause suffering objectively evil requires a transcendent moral standard. In the indifferent universe Paul Draper describes, there is no good or evil, only what Richard Dawkins in 1995 called pitiless indifference. The objection only works by borrowing the concept of objective evil from the very worldview it seeks to deny, making the argument logically incoherent.
My opponent's defense is a classic retreat from evidence into semantics. The appeal to mystery, citing William Alston, is simply an admission of explanatory failure, not a refutation. His central claim that atheism cannot ground the concept of evil is demonstrably false. We can and do ground objective morality in the tangible well-being of sentient creatures, as thinkers like Shelley Kagan detailed in 2011. The problem is not that suffering violates a cosmic rule, but that a supposedly all-good being knowingly permits it. By insisting that we cannot call evil evil without his God, my opponent is forced to defend a truly monstrous position. This reveals a moral framework not of objective goodness, but of radical divine permission for any horror.
I have 3 questions for you. First, is the fine-tuning of physics for life not a form of concrete physical evidence? Second, does objective evil exist without an objective standard for good? And finally, is the worldview of naturalism itself a scientifically testable and falsifiable hypothesis?
First, You asked if the fine-tuning of the universe is concrete evidence for God. The answer is no. The observation of fine-tuning isn't proof, it's a prompt for more scientific inquiry. Plausible, non-supernatural explanations like the multiverse models proposed by physicists like Sean Carroll are far more scientifically sound. Next, you asked if objective evil can exist without a divine standard. The answer is an emphatic yes. Objective moral values are grounded in the tangible well-being of conscious creatures, not a divine command. Suffering is objectively bad because of its real, measurable effects, making a supernatural lawgiver completely unnecessary for that standard. Finally, your question about whether naturalism is a falsifiable hypothesis. The answer is no. Because it isn't a single scientific hypothesis to be tested, it's the foundational worldview that nature is all there is, based on the consistent and ongoing success of science. Now, I have 3 questions for you. First, is a fawn burning to death for days a morally necessary event? Next, should a perfectly loving God provide sufficient evidence for a relationship with him? Finally, is there any conceivable evidence that could actually falsify your belief in God?
Regarding your first difficult question about the fawn's suffering, the answer is no, I do not believe it's a morally necessary event. However, just because I cannot personally see its necessity does not mean one cannot exist. To make that leap is to claim a God's eye view of reality that no human actually possesses. You then asked if a loving God should provide sufficient evidence for a relationship. My answer is yes, and I argue that he has. The evidence is all around us, in the fine-tuning of the cosmos, the origin of the universe from nothing, and the very existence of a moral law. It's sufficient for anyone willing to investigate the claims honestly. Finally, you asked if there is any conceivable evidence that could falsify my belief. Again, the answer is yes, my belief isn't blind. For instance, a definitive proof that something can emerge from absolute nothing or a coherent demonstration of objective morality in a purely material universe would challenge the very rational foundations for my belief.
Let's assess what has been established. The motion God exists is an extraordinary claim that was defended not with extraordinary evidence, but with philosophical tactics designed to shift the burden of proof. My opponent's case rests on asking us to disbelieve our own eyes, to see the universe's apparent pitiless indifference as a veil for a loving yet hidden plan. This is not an argument from evidence, it is a demand for faith in spite of it. The problem of gratuitous animal suffering, the argument from divine hiddenness, and the clear physical basis of consciousness are not minor puzzles. They are powerful, unrefuted pieces of evidence that point directly away from theism. When a proposition lacks positive proof and is actively contradicted by the observable world, logic requires a single verdict. The motion is not proven, it is decisively refuted.
My opponent insists the motion is actively contradicted by the observable world, yet my entire case has been built upon observable science. I presented concrete physical evidence from cosmology. The universe began to exist from nothing, and its fundamental constants are fine-tuned against all odds for life. These are not philosophical tricks, they are facts that point to a designer. Conversely, my opponent's every objection, from the evil of suffering to the use of logic itself, presupposed a framework of objective value and reliable reason. As Alvin Plantinga's work demonstrates, these concepts find their only secure grounding in a theistic worldview. The final contrast is this: a worldview of pitiless indifference that makes reason and morality an illusion, or a worldview where they are real. The evidence makes the latter the superior explanation.